Hi, everybody. This is Help Me Be Me. And this is an episode about fear and the Enneagram, which I am brand new to. I am going through Enneagram coaching right now. So I've learned about it. And so I wanted to share what I think is really insightful about it. I am not going to go through all that is involved in the Enneagram, but I'll kind of do a top line and I invite you to explore it on your own if it sounds helpful to you. So, this is an episode about an aspect of it, which is what motivates us in the form of fear. And I think that for me, what's been really eye opening about the Enneagram. So, what that is basically um, in the like most basic terms, it's kind of a personality quiz. It's a very in-depth set of categories that take apart what motivates you and what is kind of like a, a an underlying characteristic of your personality that is really based on your earliest strategies in life. And I think that what is I feel like I'm the type of person that's very cautious or adverse to any categorization, like you know, the love language or what's that book? There's a book about like your love language or your love types that I feel like is is kind of damaging to people in certain ways. This is not that because it's really based on your knowledge of yourself. So it's not like it's like taking it and twisting it. It's really just like filtering what you would present or what you would say is conscious. So I feel like it's a less of a kind of sneaky and or possibly harmful type of self-analysis to go through. I like from the outside I was like, "No thanks. I'm not into that kind of stuff." When I took the quiz, I was like, "Oh, it's just like a way to kind of pull out the threads about yourself that are presenting to you." So, anyway, all of that is to say, um, I think it's really interesting if you can kind of take apart your personality from the perspective of fear and like fear strategies that we develop really, really early on. And because they kind of are like our underground operating system, they kind of drive a lot of the default choices that we make, like our kind of automatic responses to things. And I find that when these strategies become dominant is when we are in the most depleted setting, when we're really taxed, when the nervous system is overwhelmed, which coincidentally is pretty often for a lot of us nowadays. And that is partly just because of the way society works. Like we have an influx, like a totally overwhelming amount of information that we are inundated with every single day. Partly just because of like modern life, phones, the internet, etc. If you're a person like me, you're also on like a program where you're constantly like receiving chats from people throughout the day and then emails throughout the day and like pings from other people. So it's like to be in that kind of constant reactive, low grade threat response state means you're often driven by your defaults. So, if you are a person who is noticing you're in your default reactive state all the time, and you are experiencing any loops in your life and you kind of can't get to the bottom of why you're in particular loops, then I think this is an episode for you. Um, with that, I have some parts in this episode: what, why, and the how, the tools. And the part one is the what. Um, I said it before lightly about the Enneagram. I think it is useful because it is a framework and it allows you to start noticing things about yourself. And I'm going to give you just a top line of the types in the Enneagram, but I, again, invite you to take a quiz online. It'll take about 30 minutes to an hour, but it's like pretty interesting to see just what you answer honestly when you take it. Um, there are nuances. So if you take the quiz, know that like it's not just like you are the most basic thing. It's not like to reduce you as a person. It's really just a starting point because there are other facets to it. But I think that what it can be used for is a mirror, and it can give you an underlying insight into how you default. And that is the part I wanted you to walk away with is like, it'll give me kind of an organizing question mark I can ask if I go into a default setting or when I'm noticing myself doing a pattern that I'm trying to like unlearn. Um, so, all right. This is directly from Google. Know that the you can find many resources about the Enneagram of personality. There are 9 core types. That is the key idea that there are um, people that are driven by specific underlying emotional motivations. And it is all about what that person is trying to get and what that person is trying to avoid. So a lot of this comes down to like what we're trying to protect, what we're trying to prove, and what we notice is a behavior. Like it's the moments that I'm describing or when you might notice yourself doing something and you're like, "Huh, that's interesting. I'm just going to override something in my life." Like I notice I get conscious when I'm motivated by this particular thing because I'm like it's a very self-aware moment of I'm being controlling. Like that's my for me, it's like a power thing. I'm like I notice when it arises and I just take a little mental note like, "Huh, that's interesting." Um I think of it as like we are aware of it. We're not it's not totally unseen. Oftentimes, though, we don't know where it's coming from. We don't know where the behavior is coming from in ourselves. So that's where this is really helpful. So I'm going to give you a super brief list of the 9 Enneagram personalities. And maybe as you listen to these, you can just see which one in your body makes you, that kind of resonates. And maybe because it feels familiar. Um, and, and know that, as I said, it's not to be reductive. I noticed that when I got my type, I was like, hmm, I'm more than that. Like I felt a little offended by it. But then I was also like, I know that I answered these questions honestly. Therefore, this is something I should just take as objective information. But I also know that there are like other, nuanced pieces to it. So that is all to say, like, don't be offended. Or if you find yourself like being resistant to something, like take that as feedback. All right, type 1 is the reformer. And the core motivation is to be good, to be right, to be ethical, to be in control of mistakes. And the underlying fear of that person is being corrupt, wrong, lazy, or defective. And so the pattern you will notice in your life is you improve everything, you hold very high standards, and you have a very harsh inner critic. And this type is known as like a perfectionist, an extreme perfectionist. That's the first one. Type 2, the helper. The helper's core motivation is to be loved, wanted, and indispensable. And their underlying fear is being unwanted or unworthy of love. And so the pattern that this person presents with is giving to others to earn connection and appreciation. The third type is the achiever. The core motivation of the achiever is to be valuable, admired, successful, impressive. And their underlying fear that motivates them is being worthless or a failure. A pattern that will present in their life is performing, will constantly adapt, will constantly win, curates an image of achievement. Type 4, the individualist. The core motivation is to find identity, meaning, and emotional authenticity. The underlying fear that drives them is having no significance or personal identity. And the pattern you might notice that is prominent: deep feelings, longing, uniqueness, emotional intensity. Type 5 is the investigator. The investigator's core motivation is to be competent, capable, and self sufficient. The underlying fear of this person is being overwhelmed, helpless, or incapable. And the pattern that presents is withdraws to observe, conserve energy, or gather knowledge. Type 6 is the loyalist. And the loyalist's core motivation is to feel safe, secure, supported, prepared. Underlying fear is being without guidance, support, or protection. And a pattern is that they will scan for risks, test trust, and they are loyal but anxious. Type 7 is the enthusiast. The core motivation is to stay free, happy, stimulated, and avoid pain. Underlying fear is being trapped in emotional suffering or deprivation. And a pattern is chasing experiences, possibilities, fun, distraction. Type 8 is the challenger. This is my type, by the way. The core motivation is to protect themselves, stay strong, avoid vulnerability by controlling others. Underlying fear is being weak, powerless, controlled, or betrayed. Pattern is to be assertive, protective, confrontational, intense. These are, by the way, super, super reduced descriptions. So I invite you to do your own Googling or get a book on Amazon. Number 9, the peacemaker. The core motivation is to maintain peace, stability, comfort, connection. The underlying fear is loss, conflict, disconnection. And the pattern that emerges is merging with other people, avoiding conflict, numbing priorities. And um, if this is helpful, just because I know I read a lot of information, the super simplified way people summarize that these various emotional engines is number 1, I must be right. Number 2, I must be needed. Number 3, I must succeed. Number 4, I must be unique. Number 5, I must understand. Number 6, I must be secure. Number 7, I must stay free. Number 8, I must stay strong. Number 9, I must keep peace. So all of these are very different. I mean, there's a lot of overlap or nuance, I should say, but like a lot of these are really specific kinds of motivators. And in the moments that we are in that energy of overcompensation or on the back foot, like when you notice that you're really exhausted or not your best, or you're just depleted energetically, this is what will come out, this strategy, whatever it is. And so when we are in especially a feeling that is triggered that relates to our whatever your number is, whatever your coping style is, whenever you're triggered is when this strategy will be the most obvious to you. It's when it'll present itself the most because it's an overreactive response. It's like an overcompensation that comes out. Um, and and this I think is relevant because when we are in fear, we are also blind. Like we're not in truth. I say this pretty often, but like the truth is it's a relief. It has a very different energy. When we're in truth, we feel peaceful. We feel like even if it's not a good truth, we're like, it feels like kind of a relief. It's like a resolution. It's a very different energy than fear, which is like a resistant, controlling. Um, what's really interesting about starting to understand what the underlying motivators are is when you have awareness, you can recognize what's driving loops or patterns or overcompensations in your life, things that are keeping you away from the things you actually want. Like, for example, spaciousness and peace and not overworking in my situation. For you, it might be being too much of a caregiver in somebody else's life or having to overcompensate and not show your true self. Whatever the pattern is, when you have the awareness of the very ambiguous fear scripts below that, um, you can ask yourself, do I need to be doing that anymore? And I think a lot of these things in our life, we're overcorrecting for things at the cost of ourself. So this is really about moving toward more of what you want, being more conscious about what is holding you back, expanding your lens. Um, I think it's very subtle, and it'll be like feeling into a vague area. Um, but but once you have the insight, it becomes an opportunity for like what I'll call um metacognition. Like you'll be in a situation and you'll say, I know this is the feeling, therefore I'm just going to become aware of it. And sometimes after that, we might have an action we will take in service of change, in service of under, it's not about being so harsh on ourselves and overcorrecting so much. It's about just loosening the grip of that thing. So it might not be like changing so dramatically. It might be just as simple as naming the feeling, naming the thought that otherwise previously was hidden to you. Um, One of the tools I learned for myself, if I am going into this overdrive, overactive, constant controlling, constant drive, all I need to do is when I notice it, maybe I need to give myself some space. It is the smallest, most achievable shift that we get out of this. Um, Awareness is the most important thing. I think a lot of the time we think, I want to change, therefore I need to do this new big action. I'm going to force myself to do the thing everybody else does. Like, I have stress, therefore I'm going to take on a 20-minute meditation practice every day. Maybe that's not achievable for you because it's something your body actively does not like or want. Instead, there'd be like a much more achievable outcome for you that is just simple awareness of when you're in a moment that you could use some relief. And maybe you're going to take a very small, achievable action in service of disengaging from the loop that you have in your life. Um, this is I would also say this analysis or like going through this practice of understanding what your type is really helpful for just knowing how to grow into your other gifts, um, moving past areas that you might be stuck. And um, I know for myself, there are areas that are accessible to me that just having now this insight, I can lean into them more deliberately. They feel natural. They're complementary. They will improve my life dramatically. It's just like it gives you kind of a map for um, enhancing your life and really understanding your nervous system. Another thing I wanted to bring up, which I think is really, really interesting, if you are a person who is defensive or has a problem with defensiveness, previously I kind of thought of that as a knee jerk response to not wanting to feel like a bad person or not wanting to feel guilty, or I had a very, I guess, simplified view of what defensiveness is, which is like insecurity. And in fact, a lot of what defensiveness is just the simple aversion to having a feeling or feeling hurt. That's it. It's a rejection of a feeling. And that is such a big concept. I think that's such a big concept. Just a rejection of having a feeling. When we go into a state of I'm not going to have a feeling, we instead think our way into a strategy. How can I, instead of having this feeling that's very inconvenient, how can I make it into something else, a path to an outcome that I know is predictable? And I think for myself, as a person who is pretty consistently defensive in like personal relationships, I can see that the rejection of not wanting to have a feeling in my solving, my mental controlling, really what that does is uh, not only makes me not present with somebody, makes me not experienced honestly by another person, It also gives me this very weird message about myself in that overthinking process. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you're doing that and you're like, why am I lying? What's my brain doing right now? It's so confusing. I just put that epiphany in here because I thought it was really, really amazing, but does not belong in this section at all. Anyway, where was I? Part two, the why. Well, I think it's important to know I don't know, what motivates us, what drives us. I think we are in as I said, a culture, society, a time that is very built on a an accepted baseline of overwhelm. Like culturally, I think we are just all overwhelmed as just the norm. It's just like the normal societal expectation that we're just going to be constantly inundated all the time. So it's like, unless you have actively rejected that and are curating like space away from the computer, away from the phone, time to meditate, to like not be inundated by content and news and stuff like that, then you're probably in like some semi-triggered state or an overactive nervous system all the time. And so I think what is interesting about this categorization of things is it is really about understanding the things you don't see about yourself, like the ways that you get kind of stuck into patterns that you don't really like understand about yourself, but you can't see what is underneath it. So unconscious blocks in our body feel like just areas you can't see. They feel like blind spots. Like, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of talking to a therapist or talking to a friend or somebody, and they've asked you a question, and then there's just nothing that's coming. Like, they'll ask you a personal question about something, and you're like, I don't know. Like, it's like feeling around in an area of your brain, and there's nothing. It's like there's a missing door. It's kind of like I'm searching, really trying, genuinely searching, and nothing is coming up. So that's kind of where these blocks live. So I think one thing that's happened for me since I've kind of understood my type is when I am in like a very ordinary situation where I would normally have like a coping pattern that would override that, like a situation where I'm like, I could ask for help right now. That's an example. I could allow myself to be um, a backseat role in this situation. And then my default setting is to kind of like over overreach or take over a situation. So now that I know what my type is, I can actively notice, oh, this is my type getting triggered, and I can now take a backwards or a back seat. I can actually choose the alternative only because I know this information now. And that is why I think it's really helpful, because you can break out of patterns more effectively and create more balance in your life, because it's no longer this kind of like obtuse blind spot, you know? Um, so, all of that said, all of these strategies are like built into us, but they're not like super meaningful to us anymore. Like, they're kind of like they were built by a child. And it's not like it's about really anymore your worthiness as a person, or your like dire life or death needs. It really is just an inclination more than anything. Like, for me, it's a very strong dislike of vulnerability. I just am not comfortable in it. It doesn't feel like good to me in my body. And so it activates my nervous system. But I also know logically, like, it's not going to hurt me. It's not dangerous to me. And actually, it'd probably make my life a lot more balanced to like allow in these very specific situations. So now I can like actively override that default. So all of that is just like giving your brain a new framework for identifying those little blind spot moments. So, as you move through the rest of this episode, I just invite you to look at your assumptions about yourself and like your own behavior. The other thing that I think is really important about seeing this like underlying fear script, whatever it is, underlying fear motivator, is that I think a lot of us tend to mislabel what we do and pathologize it. Like just because it's like for me as a person who's like read all these books and gone to school as a therapist, I'm constantly analyzing my own behavior based on like what the most obvious logical outcome or conclusion is based on like all people. I'm constantly saying like it's probably because of low self-worth, or it's probably because of blah blah blah. Now that I have this other insight, it's like I'm not so quick to make something so severe. So it's like I think what will happen is you'll start to cut yourself a lot more slack, and things won't mean such big dire things anymore. um so with that, here's part three, the how, the tools. But first, a brief word from our sponsors. Okay. So the tools. This is all. They're very gentle. They are practical. They're not severe. They're not scary. They're not overwhelming. It's really just about like noticing, becoming really aware, becoming kind of like a researcher on yourself in your own life, um, and noticing fear moments, like fear in the act when it arises, and when you notice it, like when you notice your little unconscious trend, you'll be able to override it, and each one of them will be really, really small. And it arises from just, like a little light bulb will turn on. First tool is called It's My Fault. Um, this is if you are a person who goes into um, guilt, like your trigger is around your self definition is guilt, and like going into a really severe state of, ah, I am the worst. I failed, like a really, really visceral response to like misstepping. Um, it's almost like an ego defense state where your body goes into like a catastrophizing over response to like doing something wrong. If you are that type of person like me, the tool is quite simply to stop and kind of go into a third person awareness of the fact that you're in that state, and then immediately deliberately say, how can I cut myself some slack? How can I re-diagnose this response? Because quite literally, that is your vice, is guilt. It's like it's an such a powerful addiction of sorts, like for your body to go into that like intense flooding when you're in that physical state of being flooded with guilt. It is an an automatic response that is you attaching a much heavier story to a behavior than the behavior actually deserves. And so often what we think is shame, like we think it is our body feeling like a legitimate response to something we have really done wrong. It is also our response to fear. It's like an old fear response. It's not accurate, is what I'm saying. So when we have a feeling in our body that we attribute to us fucking up or being bad or being lame, it's us misdiagnosing, first of all, being in an energy depleted state. And also, we will grab the most painful possible interpretation as a kind of a default setting. It's because we have a legacy of doing exactly that thing. So I just want you to start there. When you have your first diagnosis of like, oh my God, I totally did the worst thing ever. This is so terrible. First step is to go third person, look at it from the outside. Second step is to ask, like really deliberately relax your energy in your body and ask, how can I cut myself some slack? Am I being overly sensitive and overly harsh on myself? Assume the answer is yes. Like, assume really deliberately that the answer is like you're being overly harsh on yourself. And then the last step of it is to really, as if you're a third person, conceptually imagine the thing you have done is not so bad at all. Um, and that part is like, it will take some imagination. It will take you like deliberately working through in your mind's eye, like that as if it was uh, an imaginative play game and like you're a kid. Your circumstances matter, you know, where you are in your head energetically makes a difference in how a situation hits you. And you might have a completely different read on the exact same contents of this situation if you were in a different headspace. It all of those things create the reality. Like the same exact details of the scene and of the situation could mean a completely opposite thing to you in a different energetic state. So it's like the energetic state is the most relevant thing to how it is being digested by you personally. If you need a prompt, if it helps, maybe the kindest interpretation of myself in this situation is also the most true one. So just really like focus on the energy, switching the energy of your response. All right, the next tool, the opposite is also true. This one is magical. It is gonna be kind of a mind fuck when I explain it, but like if you're fear forecasting and you are telling a story about the future in your fear, know that fear is like the cheapest, worst fortune teller. It'll constantly predict a future and present it as like very likely. And all of the things will be like, rationalizing, trying to think of like a plan around the future and like how you're going to save yourself and all of this stuff. Fear is like all of these stories about yourself and what's wrong with you and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One thing that I will do often when I'm in any kind of judgment of myself or any judgment of a situation that is negative is I will stop and think, what is the opposite? What is the opposite of this story? And then the magical half of it. Notice that that is also completely true. Like whatever our interpretation is that's bad is true, but the opposite interpretation that is positive is also true. Like, for example, I'm a failure. I'm a failure. In your body, that might be completely true. I fucked it up. This is really bad. That might be completely true. Flip it over. I'm a hero. Apply that to the situation and really define that. What does that mean? Like, okay, I am because I did blank, because I did blank. The point is, it is true. Literally, both can be true at the same time. All of that is the way reality is at any given moment. So if you're ever in a triggered state because you think you did something, some irreparable harm in some specific form, really tune into how can I notice that the opposite is also true? It's like really this is like wiggling, a wheel stuck in the mud and allowing you to find this gray area in reality. Like everything comes down to our lens. Everything comes down to the way we're going to look at reality. Which side of the coin are you going to live on? All right, the next tool is called mud creature energy. I like this one because I think it's just a good reminder. I feel like a lot of the best tools are just like you keep them in your pocket for when you need them and then you pull them out. And they are all different for different situations. Mud creature, I think of as like the most primitive energy we can ever be in when we're like so cranky, so mean, so depleted, such a dark mood. Sometimes your body will just or your brain or whatever it is, maybe you're hormonal, maybe you've had the like gnarliest week ever and you have zero glucose left for kindness, like you could not squeeze it out if you tried. If you notice you are a mud creature and you're like, wow, I'm in dark primitive energy, first thing is just to recognize it for what it is. Nothing good is going to come out of this person. Nothing, I have zero access to my wisest, nicest self. And that is because of where I am energetically. That's what I want you to recognize. And then second is just to not ask anything of that person. No, you got to just traverse time. You got to skip over this mood. It cannot be bargained with. And so all of the usual coping mechanisms are not going to change it. Like the capable, open-hearted version of you is nowhere to be found because of this energetic state. Therefore, what you got to do is skip it. And by skip it, I mean you either have to go right to bed or watch a movie, or if you can't do that because you have children and they need you, you can also do whatever you can to get into a different headspace. Like any reset button you can possibly apply. Um, I mean things that like, and you have to think of it conceptually as a head change. Like when I'm in that state, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna think my way out of this. Really, what I got to do is change my physiology. I got to change my body. And by that, I mean like cold shower, running, yoga, something. Movies are helpful because it's like it allows you to change where you're trending, I guess. But like whatever you're trying to do, if it's not working, just wait till tomorrow. And also just don't like lump on meaning and judgment. I feel like it's like some part of us thinks I need to embellish this mindset and really take it seriously and think about it, what it means. And I need to like follow it through to like what's the core of it. And sometimes it's just like your body needs rest. Quite literally, that's all it is. Okay, cool. The next tool, listen to the nudges. Um, I I usually always listen to my inner voice, but I think there are certain times when there will be louder rationalizations from your head that will trick you. And so this tool is really just a reminder to like when you have a gut tingling, an insight that says, I know the truth. I know the truth and I should act on it. And that's what I'm calling out with a highlighter. When you know something is true and you have that little tiny whisper that says, this is true and I should do something about it. Never ignore that. Never discount it. Never talk yourself out of it. It's so seductive, especially if there's like competing motives, like if there's somebody that's like, you know, really nice to you and really supportive of you, but there's something that's true that doesn't sit right. It's like you can't it can be so confusing, but like the truth is the most important whisper. We cannot ever ignore that. Um, and I'm not trying to say like if you have actual, real logical reasons that you're not acting on something, like I'm not saying like ignore it and just go with the truth. I'm like, yeah, 100% like we need to put things in context, but I think when you're in doubt about something, like the truth always wins. The truth never goes away and it's always going to come back and present itself. It's like if you ignore something that you know is like your conscience is nagging you about, it will come back, and when it comes back, it will present itself in a more in a bigger way, and you'll be like, I knew it. I knew it before and I should have acted on it. So this is more than anything just a little reminder. Like don't feel guilty. Don't judge it. It's not bad. It just is. The truth is the truth is the truth is the truth. Um, okay. The next tool, the body knows. I've already kind of touched on this, but I think it's a um, really helpful reminder. Like when your body is um, in a state of truth, when you know something that is resonating with you in a deeper way, it arrives in the rest of your body. It arrives in your stomach. It arrives in like your chest, in your shoulders. And if you are ambivalent, if you're in a state where you're like, I don't know what it is. I like to just tune in. Where is it coming from? Where is it centered? If it's fear, it'll feel like very like chaotic and noisy in your brain. It'll be a narrative that spins. It will go in circles, it will start itself over, and it will rationalize constantly. If it's the truth, it'll feel like relief. It'll feel more quiet, simple, calming, and I think you'll feel it in your belly. And it'll feel a little bit more soft, I guess. And if you notice that you're like, I don't have either of those things, and your body's asking the same question over and over again, it's probably because it's not baked yet. And so you just have to wait for the timer to go off. You have to let it go, step away, um, and just allow it to arrive. When it arrives, when your answer arrives, it's so plain and simple. It almost like comes from the back of the head. It just presents itself like an obvious, very simple kind of thing. And if it's not baked, it's not baked. We can't rush it. We can't force it. The other textures of this energy are relieved, not superstitious, not anxious. It's relief. It's not muscling. It is like falling, falling backward. Um, okay. The next tool, zag. If you are a person who is in that stage of feeling like you are driven by a fear, it is, I think, the best antidote to that is to just do the opposite. So, like, quite literally, do something different. Do something in any different direction that is in honor of overriding the anxiety. And I mean, like, even anxiety that is like in the form of rigidity or aversion to something. Like, one thing I do to try and grow myself is to literally just take a step in the opposite direction, just as a means to disable the rumination. Even if I don't end up following through with the rest of that path, I'm like, all right, I'm obsessing about fill in the blank, fear. I'm just going to override it by doing something in honor of the opposite so I can let go of this rumination. It's just about like teaching your brain out of a habit of constriction, rigidity, obsession. Because I think the worst pain in the world is when we feel trapped in an inaction, like that feeling of incompetence. I cannot move. I'm stuck. That feeling like gives us a sense of panic. And the longer we watch ourselves not acting, the longer we stay in that inaction, the worse it gets, the worse we feel about ourselves, the more we blame ourselves, the more we feel like, oh, this is just because I'm incapable. So, all that is to say, if you're in that stage of I'm not acting, I'm ruminating, I'm obsessing about my inaction, just take one step in a concrete direction of the opposite. It doesn't even matter if it's meaningful to you. It doesn't even matter if it's you're going to follow through on that path. It's just about breaking the thought loop, the rumination thought loop. So I invite you to do it right now. I think the best time to zag is like in the very instant you recognize that you might need to. And like, don't overthink it. All imperfect actions are welcome. The only thing that matters is an action. I hope this episode's helpful. This is my closing. Um, I mean, yeah, I'm like very, very intrigued by this coaching that I'm doing right now. I'm going to post more about it as I do it. But I think that my main point in my closing is like, we are malleable. There is constant access to change. We can constantly evolve ourselves. We have that neuroplasticity, especially when we are in a mindful state. So, like, when you're going throughout your day, just notice when these strategies present themselves because they're often like, that thing where you're driving home the same route you've driven every day and you tune out, mentally you tune out. So many of the loops in our lives or the patterns in our lives that create imbalances in us are completely on autopilot. So really what I'm inviting you to do is just notice, like, when am I overreaching? When am I overcompensating? When am I discounting myself and putting myself in a disadvantage? And just like notice. That's the first thing, is just to notice. Um, and I really like to do those things now because I know I am trying actively to grow myself as an adult. I'm constantly trying to look at myself in a mirror and take accountability for the things that I am not proud of or would not want to do again. So I think if you are that in that stage in your life, these are really helpful practices for growth. And I think it can be like a game. It can be a really positive shift that will create more balance for not only you, but for people in your life. Like, I noticed that where I'm overactive, I'm disempowering other people. And when they can show up and it can be more balanced, they feel more valuable and more confident in their just individual selves because I've given the space for that to happen. So I hope this is helpful. I said you my love, and I'm going to put some links to random information in the show notes if you're interested in any of this. And don't forget to smile.